I've learned everything from the ground up. I never came from a hospitality family. I never came from money. It was, let's do this. Once we're cooking on gas, the economy starts to cook on gas. Cost of living comes down, employment comes down, inflation that comes down, which then in turn brings in interest rates down, and your growth rate goes up. So when people talk to me about basically leadership, I think I'm a pretty good leader. The problem with hospitality is that we're very, very good at what we do, but we're very, very bad at telling people how bad it is. We employ 3 million people. We generate 66 billion in taxation. We have a big deal. We're just not seen it.
The voices you know, Timothy, Tracy, and Joe on the show. From front of house to chefs on the line, every voice can shape the future each time. Every voice can shape.
Welcome to Talking Hospitality.
Hiya, how you doing? You all right?
Very well, thank you. Who is Andy Lennox, and what's the story behind your journey across pubs and restaurants?
So I started in the industry at 21. I was essentially basically fell into the industry to a certain extent. I'd always worked in bars and restaurants. Ran my first kind of, assistant manager, at university. And then basically I came along and a couple of mates of mine were putting together a restaurant, and they said, look, would you like to get involved? So I said, yeah, we got involved. And we started a company called Cotai, which we built to 12 restaurants and sold to private equity in 2016. And then I decided stupidly to go back into the industry and start, going back into pubs. We've now done more Thai restaurants as well. And yeah, it's been a journey.
So I've eaten at Nasara.
Okay, no, perfect. Yeah.
So, well, last year, end of last year. So, if only I knew the person I was speaking to was this guy. So,
yeah, no, I mean, Thai has been a big part of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done, we've got 4 new Saras now. We had 12 Kotais, and essentially what happened was we sold the company to private equity. Didn't really go that well, to be quite frank. And it's one of those things that, you talk about as a businessman. We just kind of went to loggerheads, and I decided that I was going to leave. So about 2 years later, I left. And then about 4 years later, they went into administration. Then Nusara was born because all of the chefs who I've known for decades came back to me and said, look, well, we don't have a job.
Yeah.
And so the first Nusara actually was only ever meant to be a single unit entity, and it was there to protect Nusara, who's Nusara Padawang, her husband, Tamanoon, and then 2 of the other chefs. And it was meant to be that kind of like, let's just protect these people, basically my Thai family. And it just went mental. And then we started building, restaurant after restaurant. So
Nasara's like your first chef, right?
So the first ever chef we ever employed was a lady called Nusara Padawang. And so we thought, actually, why don't we name this after her? And I brought back my operations director from Cotai, Sophie Cox. And she then came back and we had Zimbrai at the time as well. And she came to work for me there. I mean, most of my head office team, are, again, they're like my hospitality family, but they've all worked for me for, 10 years. That, we know each other, pretty well.
Why is Thai so important to you? Obviously, you've done Cotai, but what made you do Thai restaurants? As I'm quite interested, because I'd love to open a Thai restaurant in theory.
Yeah.
What led you to that?
And ultimately, it's one of those things, in the marketplace at the time we were doing Thai tapas, which was very, very, very cool. Nobody was really doing Thai food in the industry that was cool, is probably the best way to put it. It was very much, family-run Thai restaurants, and they didn't really have a vibe. And we thought, actually, we can create something that might have a vibe. And we did the first restaurant. That was a crazy journey. I mean, there's a whole podcast just on Cotai and that journey. But, we opened a restaurant in Boscombe, didn't have a clue what we were doing. It was totally a disaster. We literally watched paint dry because we ran out of money so many times. And, this I'm 21, learning what is hospitality? Do I need a till? Here's a whole podcast. And we then start to learn everything. And this is the thing for me, hospitality, I've learned everything from the ground up. I never came from a hospitality family. I never came from money. It was, let's do this. I'd been attacked in a nightclub years before, and I had $7,000. And I had £7,000, and I was like, right, I'm going to put this into this, and then this is what I'm going to do. And yeah, so the whole thing started for with £7,000, and we basically went all the way through to relatively big numbers, and then basically went back into the market. We launched Nusara, which was what I wanted to do with Kotai. Kotai was, after 10 years, was getting a bit old. It needed a bit of a refresh, and that was the kind of loggerhead moment arguments and about I want to refresh the business. I want to make it look more premium and everything like that. And so Nusara was born basically, which was essentially my blueprint for what I wanted to do with in our refurbishment program. And that went from strength to strength. We were 1, 2, 3. I mean, we've actually built more Nusaras. I think we've done 4 in 4 years, and I think with Kotai we did 3 in 5 or so, and then we went so actually we've actually the trajectory's actually been bigger. And then we basically went into the pubs. This is my local we're sitting in, the Old Thatch. I think it had 18 landlords in about 25 years, and so it was just a beautiful pub, really badly run. And a couple of guys had basically come in here about 2 years before, and they'd started to do a really good job, but they weren't quite there. And then they were like, well, look, we're not going to do this anymore. It's not working. And I said, well, look, why don't we just join partners, join forces, and let's see what we can do. And so this was the first pub, and then we've got 3 more now.
I mean, it is a beautiful pub.
Oh, it's a stunning pub.
Viewers and listeners, my mum's here today, so we're watching my language, but it's beautiful. And then when we came in, it's the whole wow factor and looks and crannies and history as well.
Oh, I mean, a
little bit about
I mean, this pub, ironically, is this pub's 17th century. It's the old gatehouse to the Old Woodlands estate, and supposedly the Old Woodlands estate was big, massive house, and they were the first to have like gas, central heating. And it blew up. And so we've got the old gatehouse. We've got the old gatehouse door, the old Woodlands estate door around a corner where there's a ghost behind it and all this kind of stuff. But this pub has so much history. And actually, if you ask anybody about the Old Thatch, everybody has a story about it. Even like I sit on a board. I'm the chair of the tourism board down here, and my president. So that was my first job. I was a KP there. Like, everyone's got a story, and we just knew basically if we just took it over and we just really cared for it, it would work. And we've literally just taken that year by year, increased the turnover, played with everything, added new areas, Bear Island out here. So we got 200 covers out there, which was Marshland before. The marquee out here, there was literally 4 picnic tables. So it just basically needed a bit of vision, and that's what we did. And then we took over the old Beans. We did the Goods Yard in Broadstone, which is much more of a kind of wet-led sports pub. And then we did the old Beans in Ibsley, which is just outside Ringwood, very much like this as well, and beautiful. We've got a sister pub, which is the Greyhound in Corfe Castle. And then we're just about to do the Sunray in Weymouth, just in Osmondton. And that's kind of got a boutique kind of lodges around it, and they've kind of built the pub for us, and they kind of headhunted us to come and run it, basically.
Is that an exclusive?
That is an exclusive, actually.
You heard it here.
There you go. It is an exclusive. We actually take over. We've got boots on the ground on the 1st of March, and it's one of those things where you're sitting there going, the industry is so difficult at the moment. Why the hell would I, open another pub? But this was something that we'd signed, a long time ago. It's something we've been looking into for a very long time, and it's a kind of collaborative, with the Hunt family down there. They've done a beautiful, beautiful fit out, and they've kind of headhunted us as operators. So we're really excited about that. So yeah, it's still going well. I mean, and obviously then we started on a campaign, which was fun.
Well, this is what we're here for, isn't it? But so on that note, obviously you've mentioned that it's a tough market.
Yes.
You've talked about passion and running your own business is important and how that looks. But obviously the industry is going through a difficult time. And what was the moment that pushed you from kind of just getting frustrated? Because we all get frustrated. I've run my own business. I'm about to do it again, actually. Another exclusive.
Congratulations, well done.
No, a hospitality business.
Oh, amazing.
1st of March, we also get the keys.
Oh, okay, cool.
A cafe.
Oh, perfect.
London.
Oh, amazing.
So I'll be coming to.
Well, if you need some kit, I've got loads of broken stuff which we can refurb. So
right. Well, yes. So yes.
I've got loads. I've got
recording now.
Honestly, we've got loads of. And this is the thing with hospitality. You just collect stuff. Yeah. So we've got tables and kitchen tables and chairs and So.
I'm in.
No, honestly, yeah.
Thank you. So what was the moment that pushed you from being frustrated into taking some kind of action?
We have a lobby group called the Wonky Table, which is my, every restaurant has a Wonky Table, right? Or every pub as well. And so I used to do some campaigning during lockdown. And so we can kind of campaign for Eat Out to Help Out and like the COVID grants and, actually the VAT relief there. And from that point, I've always basically pushed that we need to have a VAT piece. And so I've been campaigning for years, 5 years, 6 years for VAT. I've done 2 petitions. VAT is my kind of like thing. And then essentially we were looking at the first Reeves budget come along. I mean, that took from my business about £350,000, which was just crazy. And we kind of went, okay, well, we've just managed to figure that out. And that was like cutting things back to absolute bone. There was nothing left to give. And then Reeves came back out. I think it was obviously the autumn budget. I can't remember the actual date. And I was just like, guys, we've got to do something. We've got to do something. We were then having a discussion. I have a little board on my Wonky Table called the Round Table. And there's some really, really cool guys from down here. And essentially, I was saying, look, we need to do something big. We need to do something, we should ban people. We'd already banned Keir Starmer and Rachel, but, and I banned, and just so we know that it's not political, I banned Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt when they did their budget. So, but it wasn't resonating enough. And we couldn't really get to any consensus. Like there was, it's a political piece. It's like banning people is not really the thing. Pubs should be on political places, blah, 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 blah. And then James Fowler, Larder House, so it was a restaurant in Southbourne, literally turned around to me and said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the sticker up. And he literally went straight, put the sticker up. And essentially, I was like, we've not got consensus yet. And he said, no, I'm doing it anyway. I was like, okay, fine.
Just for people that might be, for example, got listeners in the States, or people that might not be aware of the sticker at this point, what did the sticker say? It
basically said no Labour MPs, and it was basically a barred sticker. And then it went, right? Yeah. So, and actually, to be fair, it started, with a couple of restaurants, a couple of cafes. I put it in the pub, but really where it kind of all, I suppose, really started was that Tom Hayes, the local MP for Bournemouth East, essentially started campaigning against James in terms of saying, well, look, this is not on, you shouldn't do this kind of thing. And being quite robust. I'm not going to go into details because actually, it's all out there anyway, but robustly. And that was not on in my mind. There's one me thing saying, I'm going to, we should do it. There's another thing saying, everybody should have the right to do anything. Yeah. And so it was that. And then basically I said, well, look, and he basically said, I'm a good campaigner. I can, I'm going to campaign against this. Well, I'm quite a good campaigner too. And so I basically turned around to James. I said, don't worry. It's up in the pub now. We'll take the pressure off and we're going to go. And at that point it was right. Okay. Let me get out my black book. We should dust off the black book from the old COVID days, start the networks back up again. And we started a proper campaign. I mean, the problem with hospitality is that we're very, very good at what we do. And we're very good at basically running our business, but we're very, very bad at telling people how bad it is. Yeah. And so it was right. Okay, this is how it's going to resonate. It resonated obviously with the public. It became a thing. It went wild. I think at the height of it, it was about 1,500, restaurants and pubs. The press obviously got massively behind it, which was great. And, the press is key to all of this stuff. Good campaigning, doesn't matter how good the campaign is. If you can't get the press to hook it, there's no point. And they did. And when they did it in there, we'll talk about, if you've got people in America. So this pub here has had the New York Times in, has had the Wall Street Journal in. Both of them have done pieces with me on here on the campaign. Ironically, there's a picture of George Washington here, and I was like, why? I've never understood why. It was always here, but actually transpires that George Washington's forebears were from just down the road, and so that's why he's here. But anyway, and so the New York Times did a real great piece, and all this kind of stuff, and we got to global press. I mean, we didn't just get a couple of rags. We got absolute national, then we got international, then we went global. I mean, when you've got the New York Times coming in for an interview, you potentially have done quite a good campaign. Yeah. And then you've got the trade bodies, so that's another thing we will talk about. But then you've got the trade bodies, and so you've got to corral them as well, because they are brilliant. Actually, all of them are very, very good people, but they all obviously have their own agendas, and in the sense of what they have to support. Yeah. So they can't support me in the sense of, they can't support no Labour MP campaign because they need to be able to speak to Labour MPs. So what it essentially became was the stick that the trade bodies also needed and the press needed to be able to then deliver the piece to Labour MPs, to Conservative MPs, to all MPs to say, look, we need help here. This, we have got to the end of the line, and we are at the end of the line. This is not, we're not taking this, and that's enough. And then, I think it was, so we were about 65, I think we're about 70 days into the campaign now. And I think it was when Rachel Reeves announced the U-turn, we just announced that there was going to be, kind of Westminster protest, and we were going to march on London and all this kind of stuff.
Would you say that's a coincidence?
It was within about 8 hours. Yeah. And then obviously we then had the 2 kind of week wait where I kind of, we said, look, okay, all right, hands, tools down for a minute. Let's see what Labour do. They then obviously came out with the pub rate relief, which was great. And to be fair, acknowledged that they did that.
Yeah.
The problem is they didn't do it for the whole of the industry.
And that's what I wanted to ask you, right, is how did you feel when you heard about that U-turn? And because it's temporary as well, isn't it? It's only temporarily. Is it enough, or are they still missing the point?
If you look at the kind of state of the nation now, you've got Wales who have come out and basically they've given 15% for the whole sector. So all of the hospitality sector. I don't think it includes hotels, but I think it includes everything else. And they've done that for 1 year. We've got 3 years for pubs, and that is good for pubs. To be fair, you've got to acknowledge that is good for pubs. The 3-year temporary piece is always going to be 3-year temporary. And it's difficult when you're campaigning because you've got to say, well, yes, but VOA, so the valuation office, do things in 3-year cycles. Yeah. So it is temporary, but it will always be temporary because they do it every 3 years.
On that note, sorry, just because we've got listeners that might not know the situation, this is that because we've got people that are listening that may be thinking, might be aware of the campaign, and they all heard that there's a U-turn, but they don't know what that U-turn is. Could you explain to them what was proposed or what that relief is?
Yeah, so essentially what was proposed was that there was going to be, I've tried to explain this to my mum loads of times, by the way. So essentially we were in a situation where they proposed that they were going to remove the COVID relief that we had on hospitality, which was 75%, then 40%. And then and they were going to put in some transitional relief, which would then basically essentially help us for a couple of years once we got to that stage. What they didn't know, which they did know, was that basically the valuations office was about to put in the new valuations, which then, increased rates substantially. So my pub went up by 116%. So it went from about 33 to about 82. And so then that relief that they'd put in, that transitional relief, after they removed COVID, put in the transitional relief, wasn't anywhere near actually helping us in any way, shape or form. It was actually basically our bills were going mental. And that's where we turned around, literally within 24 hours of that announcement, we said, you are wrong. You are absolutely and utterly wrong. This is incorrect. And some parts of the sector were hit more than the others. But the whole idea and what we'd been told, and I know this for a fact, we'd been told that when the new VAT valuations came down the line, the new VOA stuff, it would be benefiting of the hospitality sector. And, so your likes of Amazon and your likes of, supermarkets would go up a bit more and the high street would come down. That didn't happen, which they obviously then did a U-turn on. So we had these kind of 2 parts of the campaign, really, which was like, obviously get this rates relief piece done, but that's just stopping a bill that we are not already paying. And that's really key because, people, they say it's, we've come to we've given them 15% off. No, you haven't. We're just paying what we were paying. Or, we're doing some kind of, package to help to save hospitality. No, you're not, because it literally is just making sure we're paying what we're paying, not going up. Yeah. And so the second part of that was VAT. And obviously I've been campaigning for VAT for, too long. And so the second part of it was to get VAT into the conversation and to talk about proper tax reform, because our industry has professionalized massively over the course of the last 15, 20 years. I mean, if you think about hospitality 20 years ago, we were really quite crap. France and Europe were miles ahead.
Yeah.
We're now the beacon, we're the shining beacon of hospitality in Europe. And so we've upskilled, we've professionalized, we've made everything look better, feel better. We've stripped that those 90-hour week, that 80-hour week, that's gone. Okay, bad operators will still do that, and they should be called out for that. Yeah, but we like to say, well, look, guys, we want you to do 45 hours, 48 hours a week. We want you to have 2 clear days off. We want you to have a non-negotiable. If you've got a book club on a Wednesday, we want you to say we've got a book club on a Wednesday, and to block it out, and we'll never ask you to work it. If you want to work more and you want to do 80 hours a week, that's absolutely fine, but we're not asking you to. And that kind of professionalism, and this is why I basically, I've been made a fellow of the Institute of Hospitality recently, because one of the things that
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's really, it's a great honour, and it's something that is really close to my heart. Going to chartered status, so that's their key. Their key thing is to become, like a chartered accountant. Mm-hmm. We have chartered hospitality, and so I'm massively supportive of that. And and to be made a fellow is, a real honour. Something that I didn't think would ever happen. I've been campaigning for this for such a long time. It's quite emotional to finally get to a position where you've got 2 of the major parties with VAT now forming part of their manifesto pledges. The Conservatives are very close to that also, and I have a big meeting next Wednesday about that. And I actually think that there are plans afoot as well. Well, I know that there are plans afoot. I can't go into details, but I think we will have VAT as part of every single party's manifesto pledges, if not a VAT cut this year. And I think that's incredible. That is what the industry has needed for such a long time.
I mean, we have, and it's fingers crossed that things go that way. But it is the fact that the politicians and other parties are recognising that this is something.
Yeah.
And it's a huge number of people work in the industry, you should say. All of us can vote.
I think when so we have a very, very 2 kind of distinct proposals, or 2 very distinct places. One being we've got this kind of VAT proposal, 13%, food and drink. We've got that out so that every single party has that. Every single party are using that. They're using the modelling behind that.
Yeah.
This was come from our campaign. This is from me basically. This is from the Wonky Table. And the second part of that is like, guys, you do understand, and the eyes light up. Yeah. You do know that there's 6 million votes in hospitality, right? There's 3 million people who work for it. If they get one person, they convince one other person. A lot of bloody votes.
So if you're a politician listening, you know what you need to do. Just because obviously there's been a lot of support from you, but you're not without your critics, because obviously it's been controversial sometimes, particularly when you were banning Labour MPs. It's been said that sometimes, that tax isn't the silver bullet that you're presenting, and businesses themselves should look at pricing, leadership, accountability. How do you feel about that comment?
I think, and this is the same thing I've kind of said to the MPs that I have spoken. And I, before we took this No Labour MP campaign piece, I did engage with every single MP of all political creeds. I can't tell you how many MP meetings I've had, and every single colour, creed, whatever. Whether it be red, whether it be blue, whether it be green, like we've engaged with people. They get it, they listen to it, but they don't do anything. And we're sitting in this pub here. You talk about leadership. We talk about it's a dying industry. We shouldn't be having a tax cut or whatever. One being, it's not a tax cut. It feeds itself basically within a couple of years, and actually is in line with Europe. So it's basically saying, well, all we're saying is that we should be with every other hospitality industry. I mean, bloody hell, not Liberal Democrats, Ireland have got 9%.
Yeah.
We're at 20. The average in Europe is 13%. Actually, it's actually come down a little bit now. So, because of all of the people that are bringing their rates down. So when I started, it was 13%, but it's actually come down more. But we run a really busy pub here. So this pub has basically tripled its turnover since I took over. We employ a brigade of 50 people, really, really amazing manager, great ops team behind it. It does 400 roasts on a Sunday. It's busy every single day of the week. It's well controlled. We know our margins. We know our wet margins, our dry margins. We know every single element of the business. But I can't make money. And that's because the margins are just too tight.
Yeah.
So, and I've said this to, publicly anyway. So it's, this business would have turned over 1.6 million last year and made 50 grand. And that's not food. The margins are good. The wages are in control. But you've got utilities that have gone through the roof. You've got rates that are now back in. You've got rent that still keeps them going up every year. It doesn't matter what you do. It still goes up. The landlord still put it up or whichever. And so you could say, well, you should be doing better on your margins. Like, well, okay, but I physically can't do better on my margins unless I'm charging a burger at 25 quid, which no one wants to buy. Or you could say, well, you've got too many staff on. So, well, some shifts that we have are run by one manager and one bartender. How much further can I go? To the extent where you've got nobody, and then does it become hospitality? No. And this is the other side of the coin, is hospitality is not just about, I like to say that basically we don't give service, we give hospitality. Service, you go to McDonald's, you get your food, that's it, you're out. We give hospitality, and you can't give hospitality if you're literally don't have any staff. And also, what does that do for the economy? We employ young people. We employ, I love one of my favorite parts, it's close to a lot of the Wonky Table guys, especially a guy called Chris Crumbell, who's, owns a brew house and kitchen, and fantastic bloke, but really close to him, young employment, that kind of, youth mobility. Yeah. And one of the things I love doing is, seeing the fresh 16, 17-year-olds who are coming in their first job. We don't have them anymore. Yeah. We used to have one or two for every single restaurant. Okay, yes, they get a little bit of cannon fodder and they just do bus tables or whatever. But you're not there. That's not why they're there. They're normally there because one of the locals has asked, my son's, a bit shy. Could you give him a couple of hours and see if you can bring him out of his shell? And we do. I mean, we've always said that basically we can train a monkey to serve food, but we can't give that monkey a personality. And so we can take a personality and we can mold it and we can pull it out, and then we can really give them the skills they need to get on in life. It's not about getting on. If they want to be an accountant, I can't tell them how to be an accountant. I mean, I'm basically an untrained CFO anyway, but I can give them life skills, how to talk to people, how to, and how to actually get themselves through university. Look, if you're a cocktail bartender or you're a waiter, you can work your way through university, and then all you want to go traveling, you can go around the world. And we've got a network of thousands of people that we've employed that basically are all over the world doing different things. And if we don't have that, where does it come from? They've already suffered from COVID. Where does it come from? And that's and this is where all of this kind of stuff comes down to. The margins are just too tight. We're going from 10%, 10p in a pound, 10% to 3, 4p in a pound, and you just can't. Yeah, you can't reinvest. I was at a trade show yesterday. I was doing a speech at Southwest Conference, and I was walking around this trade show, and there was like robot, people, and bus tables, and all of these people saying, "Oh, this is a new fat fryer that does amazing things," and this is all this stuff. No one was buying anything. They're looking. And I'm looking, I'm going, that's wicked, I want that. But we're not buying because we can't afford to. And this is where you're going back to this kind of, what is hospitality? Well, it's the engine room of the economy, because we buy from everything. We buy everything. We buy so much. We employ people so many, and we buy so much. And you need quite a lot of stuff to make a restaurant work. And so you're actually going through all of this stuff where you're going, once we're cooking on gas, the economy starts to cook on gas, cost of living comes down, employment comes down. You then have basically inflation that comes down, which then in turn brings in interest rate down, and your growth rate goes up. Yeah. So when people talk to me about basically leadership, I think I'm a pretty good leader. My staff, I think they think I'm a relatively good leader. I'm quite hard, I'm quite firm, but I think we run a really tight ship, and I think we're really good at what we're doing. But the margins don't work anymore. They don't add up. And that's not through the fault of the industry. Any pub that doesn't do well because of a bad leader, or because they don't know their margins, or because they don't know, how to run a pub, should go bust. I'm not saying that they should stay. I'm not saying they should be supported in any way, shape or form. But if you are running a really good pub, Dorset's an award-winning pub. We are the best pub in Dorset, and we're doing 400 roasts every Sunday. It was like, it's not that we're not busy. It's not that people aren't going out. We've adapted to the 0%. We've adapted to, we've got 0% everything. We've adapted to all of the things. It's just too hard to make money.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about the running of a business by decisions that you've made. It's external that are controllable. So I totally understand. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who's got a restaurant in York, 40-seater. His electric bill $60,000 a year.
Yes,
and it's gone up from like 20.
Yeah.
It's just nuts. Yeah. So how do you accommodate that? So I'm going to just kind of final question actually, because there are people out there that we know, like yourself, admittedly to a degree, it's a struggle. I guess there's two questions really. What's your call to action for the operators that might be struggling? Do you have any sage words for them or advice that perhaps they could take right now?
So funny enough, I actually did a speech on this yesterday. Two things, I suppose. One, and I said this in a question someone asked me, is like, our industry needs to be robust in its response to the government. Yeah, so we need to basically make sure that, and this is what we have done, and it's my Wonky Table. And don't get me wrong, there are trade bodies as well that have been doing lots of good work. But this is what our campaign has done: is we have driven robust conversation, controversial at times, but it made the conversation, and that's the key. It got us into the news. It got the conversation talking, and people were like, "Really? You only make that? You only make that?" So there's that kind of thing. So be robust with your MPs. Talk to them. If they don't answer, you go back to them again and ask, and keep on doing it. I know one person, actually my business partner's wife, she sent numerous emails to her MP until he answered. And so I do think that basically as an industry, we need to be a little bit less scared and a little bit less British, but ultimately, as I said in the interview we did with the New York Times, or I think it was the Wall Street Journal actually, the British have an amazing threshold to not do anything until they reach a point where enough is enough. And you can go into a lot of history where we have won wars. Wat Tyler and his Peasants' Revolt. We have done a lot of stuff where basically once we reach that threshold, we get really angry, and that's the point we reached. In terms of your pub or your hospitality business, look, we all know that utilities went through the roof, and it really was a unbelievable time, and it still is. It still is incredibly high. It's come down a bit, but it was mental. How do you control that? And you can't add it to anybody. It just is what it is. What I say to everybody is, hospitality is like being a DJ. Okay, so you're always trying to find a perfect beat, and there's a load of different knobs that you need to pull to make that perfect beat. And you need to basically, it's the same as hospitality. It's like being an orchestra. Your strings have to basically work with your drums. Everything has to basically work together. And I think too many places forget that. I walk into too many places and I sit there and I go, what the hell is going on with their lights? In too many places, the service is rubbish, or the service is there, but they're not giving hospitality, which is a different thing. Yeah. Or the food is okay, but it's not. And ultimately, you can actually get away with relatively good food. So we always say be consistently great. Don't try to be excellent. Don't be poor, obviously, but don't try to be excellent. Just be consistently great. You can get away with consistently good food if your experience is great.
Yeah.
If the lights are right, if the music's good, if your hospitality that you're giving is spot on, all of it has to come together, and it's 1,000 pieces. I mean, there's a light over here, which if you actually looked at that light, underneath it, I have myself personally gone and stuck little brown, like the brown tape, under every single light, because when you touch it twice, it goes to like a white LED. Yeah. And so to make sure that people can't do that, I've gone around. And these are the attention to detail. Yeah. Pour the perfect pint. It's very, very simple. And a lot of hospitality is very simple. It's simply getting all of those things in line. And anybody, I'd say, basically, if your business is struggling, I mean, look, if you're a 40-cover restaurant in York, you're going to have a tough time of it at the moment. It's going to be a tough time of it because actually 40 covers isn't enough to run the unit. So that is a hard ask. And actually, we've kind of, to be fair, tried to exit as many of our units that are that small. But you can still make it good if you really, really concentrate on the hospitality and go, right, okay, so I've got a 40-cover restaurant. I'm busy, but I want to have a couple more people. How do I get my returning customer to come back? It's like, right, well, look at every single detail. It is the attention to every single element of hospitality. So I will go round. I mean, I'm looking right now, for example, I'm looking down the pub and I can see that there's one dirty glass. There's two wine menus that are the wrong way around. These are the things that you have to basically have a complete eye on. You don't, make sure that your cooling unit's working properly. It is every single element, and it's like being a DJ. Like when you find out perfectly, you can feel it. You know it. The atmosphere is eclectic. Everybody's having a really great time. Everyone's enjoying themselves, and you know it. And you always have bad services, but if you're constantly working towards that element of that kind of perfect service, you can't not win. But it is a science. It's not actually just you got to be able to feel it. And I've got managers of mine who can't feel it, and they haven't lasted because they just you just
relegate it down, don't you? Really,
there is that you either know it or you don't. I mean, I know within 60 seconds when someone walks through the door if I'm employing them, whether they're hospo or not. Yeah, you can just tell. But if I can train them to be a good server, but they may not be a hospo. And knowing and understanding how to run a service so it is eclectic is in the bones. But there are very, very key things. Just make sure you are getting the basics right. Be consistently good. Be consistently great. Don't try to be excellent. Don't try and make a dish that is unbelievable, but you get wrong 5 times a week. Just make it really, really great and get it right every single time. And that brings your returning customer base back. Our roast here, we do 400 roasts every Sunday. I've said it about 5 times now, but the reason that we do that is because the first roast at 12:01 is just as good as the last roast at 16:01. That's not 16, 8:01, 6:01, yeah. And every single one is exactly the same. And it's consistently great. And people know that every time they go to the Thatch, they're going to have a great roast. And that is why we are full all the time, because they know they're going to have it.
On that note, Andy, thank you very much.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much as well.
Hospitality. Thank you as well for what you've done for the industry.
Thanks.
And best of luck with your new venture.
Thanks very much. And you too as well.
Talking hospitality, the voices you know.